for a hot second?
Yeah.
We live? Oh, Georgina, are you good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Vital Voices series put on by the Freestyle Arts Collective. I'm your host, founder of the Freestyle Arts Collective, Christa Brown. My pronouns are she and her. Thank you so much for joining us both on live stream on YouTube and here in person. If y'all want to give a little muffled shout. So a little bit about Freestyle. We are an arts organization that started in 2019. Our mission is to amplify and strengthen voices of color through the arts. So the Vital Voices series, this is our second year. We are spotlighting 6 artists of color in the community every year, thanks to the generosity of Enterprise Bank. So every month we have a conversation like this, highlighting a magical artist like Fran and giving a platform for folks to talk about their journey, their story, and learning how we can best support artists in our own community. Before we start, I just want to thank Enterprise Bank for their support. They are the presenting sponsor of this series and have been for the last 2 years. And I also want to thank the Greater Lowell Community Foundation. They are our fiscal sponsor, making it possible for us to operate as a nonprofit organization. I also want to shout out Lowell Telemedia Center, where we are filming right now, or LTC in Lowell, for all their tech support. And if anyone is out there listening or here today, if you want to follow the Freestyle Arts Collective, we are on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Get involved, share what you're about to see, tag us. And next up, we also have our magical artist here today, Fran Collazo. You can follow her on Instagram and yes, both a photography page for her business and her personal Instagram account. So if you can follow that on Instagram, that's at ms.fran, F-R-A-N, .COLLAZO. Follow, make your friends follow. Thank you. So I think we're about to get started. So just so you all know some housekeeping things, we'll be talking to Fran with some questions I have, and then we're going to leave the end of the segment, about 15, 20 minutes, for questions from people either on YouTube or here in the studio. So, Fran, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm excited.
Good. I'm excited too.
Excited.
So before we get started, Fran, can you just share your name, your pronouns, and just who you are?
I'm Fran Collazo. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I am just a creative here in the Lowell community.
Yes, we love. So can you tell us a little bit about kind of your life growing up? What kind of led you to come here?
So I grew up on a farm in Puerto Rico. We moved here when I was about 9 years old. So I guess Lowell would be home. We were kind of like a sheltered farm life situation. And then we moved here and I got to see snow for the first time and all of that. Yeah.
How old were you when you first came to Lowell?
10, 9 and a half, 10.
9 and a half, 10. Okay, and you've been here ever since?
Throughout Massachusetts, but back here a lot. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So along your journey, both Puerto Rico and here, what part of your journey kind of led you to discover your true identity?
I feel like once I started going to like my GSA in high school, I was more able to like be myself and like express parts of my identity that I wasn't really aware that I could at the time. A lot of like going clubbing very early on when, you know.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And yeah, but even when I came out as a gay male, it still didn't feel me. And when I hit my 30s, I was like, it's now or never.
Yeah.
Time to
let
myself be fully happy, you know?
Was it just something about hitting that age that made you feel that way? Did something specific happen?
Yeah, it started to kind of feel like it's now or you're gonna keep living in this limbo forever, I guess. It was like a now or never.
Okay. So along your journey now, what would you say are the moments in your life where you feel the most gender euphoria? What brings that to you nowadays?
I feel like it's the same with like any woman, you know, you get complimented,
Yeah.
you know, you get addressed correctly. That's really important. It's little things like that. It's nothing too major, you
Mm.
know. Yeah, when people are decent about who you are, I
Yeah.
feel like that.
Yeah. So as you know, as we all know, intersectionality of identities is a huge part of being a person of color, a BIPOC person,
Hmm.
whatever you want to
Hmm.
call it. How does all the different intersections of your life kind of influence who you are?
I find that the Latin part of myself as well as the African part of myself, I gather so much inspiration from both, and being able to mix those together as well as like the gay journey and like being trans,
Mm.
the pride it takes to hold that in public, and I find that all of that inspires me
Mm.
together, I
Mm.
feel.
So going into kind of like the business side of who you are,
Yeah.
you're a stylist, you're a model, you're a photographer, and you have your own photography business. Am I missing anything?
No.
No? Slight work. Okay. What would you say with styling? What is like your favorite part of the beauty industry or that type of work?
I I love the beauty industry because every day is different.
Mm.
There's no routine. You're kept on your toes. Anything could happen and throw everything off.
Yeah.
Um, and that's exciting to me. I feel like when I'm in a routine, I kind of just like go into autopilot and there's just like no excitement in
Mm.
it for me.
Hmm.
So yeah, I like the spontaneity of it. I also like how inclusive everyone is usually with those kind of teams. Everyone's very welcoming to
Yeah.
all kinds of walks of life, etc. So I find that I get to like be my true self and like create from an honest place
Mm.
in those groups. Yeah.
And how did you first get into styling?
I started styling at like 19,
Wow. Okay.
um, just for local photographers at the beginning, and then once I built a book, I started getting clients.
Mm.
Um, and you know, I did as much as I could with it being Boston
Yeah.
and it being a certain style
Yeah.
and limited in that way.
Hmm.
And then photography kind of just came up on after. I'd been around so many photographers and seen how they work and how they set up lighting and all that. And I was like, I know enough that I
Mm.
can start doing it.
Okay. And can you talk to us a bit about your modeling journey as well, like how you got into that?
Modeling kind of came on. I only wanted to do photography, and then Christy, who is here today, wanted to see me in front of the camera, and like
Mm.
she helped me bring out that side of me where I'm able to do things like
Yeah.
that.
Yes.
And I never knew that anyone wanted to see me on that side of things, but it's
Mm.
fun. I really enjoy it.
So how does it feel? I know I love this phrase, kind of multi-hyphenate, like people who have tons of different passions. How
Hmm.
does it feel for you to kind of balance all of those things at the same time, all these different passions of yours?
I feel like it gives somewhere for like my all of the ideas to go. I
Mm.
have like many places to throw the ideas at as opposed to just one.
Yeah.
So I find it necessary for me because
Mm.
that's just how my brain works.
Yes, I get that.
Yeah.
Out of everything that you've achieved, what would you say is your proudest accomplishment?
So I have won 2 Boston Fashion Awards
Oh,
for my styling.
yes.
That was a big deal for me, especially someone who like taught themselves and like did that on their own. But I am very proud when I receive letters from people that have been listening to my journey and like they're able to apply what they learned from me into their own lives and to their own experiences with other trans people.
Mm.
I think that's really important.
That's beautiful. What what advice do you think you would give to a young person now who might be like struggling to find their creative voice, like they don't know where to start, what to do?
I say don't be afraid to get uncomfortable and like put yourself in that situation and like you learn so much from that uncomfortableness and that vulnerability that you have to put yourself in. I I think that's very important. And like to try many things. Don't just like, oh, I've been wanting to be a marine biologist since I was a child, so that's what I'm setting myself on. But it's like the passions change when you get older and life changes a lot of things for you, you know?
I love that. So nowadays, I mean, especially now, we're both living lives. You also have a business. What would you say is the kind of guiding philosophy you have on life? Like, how do you kind of characterize how you walk through the world? What's your philosophy on life?
Um, as many of you who follow me on social media, you see that I'm very transparent.
Yes.
Just because I find it's very important for the people that might not dare to have a voice to know that like there's people like you. We exist. We're out here. And we all fail and we all get up again and we thrive the next time, and that happens to everybody. And it's those things that make us feel familiar to other people and bond you, you know.
And I also might add something, because one of the things that I really like about your transparency is that you share the good, you share the bad,
The ugly,
like you
all
don't things that would, you don't care.
Yeah.
Was that easy for you? How do you, yeah.
I feel like because when I decided to transition, there wasn't much out there. People are very secretive about those kind of things, understandably so. Some people want to leave that past behind and start a new part of themselves, but I found it important to talk about my doctor visits and how I'm reacting to medication and all of that, because there's nothing out there about that.
And so you didn't have any sort of a trepidation, or you're just like, I'm just going to do that. I don't see this out there. I'm going to be that voice.
Oh, I mean, the beginning was, you know, now I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah.
But the beginning was definitely, it made me nervous, you know, seeing yourself going through that at the beginning and finding yourself. I didn't have the confidence I have now, but we got here.
Hey. And someone like me on the outside, just very inspired and very, oh, you're fine. But I just love the confidence and I think it's something to aspire to. I think when we don't care what people think, that's when we're most our authentic selves.
Yeah.
And you really, I think that every time I see something that you share,
Thank you.
whether it's good or bad, honestly.
Yeah.
Yes. So you shared with me, I remember we were talking, that you transitioned in your 30s.
Yeah.
How, can you kind of talk to us a little bit about that journey and how it affected you personally, artistically, anything?
I felt like I wanted to wait till I was sure I wanted to take that on, because I knew it wasn't going to be easy. And I feel like a lot of people think that when you transition, that it's just like, oh, I went to the doctor and that's it. There's so much you have to do before you can even start hormones and start that journey. So I wanted to be like in a good space to take that on before I just did that. So I waited as long as I could. And there's bittersweet moments of it. I feel like had I transitioned earlier, maybe the change, like life would have been different, but I don't think I'd change it now, honestly.
Yeah, things kind of happen when they're supposed to, in a way.
Yeah.
You said that living your authentic life has freed you of previous limitations and that you are creating from a place of love now. What does that mean?
So before I transitioned, it was almost like I was like wearing a costume. I was like living in this in-between world. So like I was like shy and like I wasn't able to express myself because I didn't feel like I could talk about those things. And once I released that, like now I open book.
Yes. So as you know, the series that you're part of, why I'm so happy to be able to talk to you, is we really want to put a spotlight on artists of color. And some artists, they really take being a person of color really seriously. It impacts everything they do. Some people are like, hey, I'm an artist that happens to be Black. Why is being a person of color, what does that kind of mean to you? today to represent all of those things?
I think that it's kind of just become like bigger than me, just because I hope that I inspire other people to like dare to do it. Put yourself in those rooms where you're the only Black person, you know, and just go for it and try be the first to do it if you have to be, because other people are looking up to you and like are gonna follow that, and there has to be that first, right?
Thank you. How would you say the community, both here in Lowell and beyond, can best support you? Anything.
I think a good way just in general to support anyone of color, like show up like you all did today.
Yeah.
Be present. If you can't show up, donate, you know, make sure these things don't die out. Like I went to a lovely queer event yesterday and it was so great to see it thrive and like to see it supported, because those spaces are getting smaller and smaller and lesser. So yeah, just support however you can. If you can't show up, donate, send a friend.
So what's next for you? What's coming up in your life that you can share?
Everything. More openness,
Hey.
more photography work, hopefully, more modeling.
Yes.
All of the above.
Do you want to share, you shared something that's pretty significant, but do you want to talk about that? A book.
Yes. I'm like, what are we doing? Yes.
So you're working on.
So I'm working on a book.
Yes.
I'm working on a book. It's loosely based on my life. I didn't want to make it too literal because I wanted to leave room to like tell other people's stories within there. But yeah, there's not really any books about like Latin trans women at all. So I thought it was important to like write something and put it out there.
Yeah, well, we'll all be on the lookout for it.
Yes.
So now I'm going to open it up to anyone watching on YouTube who wants to chat a question. Folks in the audience, if you have a question for Fran, just raise your hand. Do you have one? No.
Well, I'm trying to think if I have one.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah.
Who are you most inspired by in the fashion industry? Is there someone that you look to and get inspiration from, and someone that you just admire?
I am very inspired by Andrew Leon Talley. Again, another groundbreaking person of color that went into the fashion industry. It was like, I'm fierce, I'm here, you're gonna want me to tell you how to dress.
Yes.
And made that lane for himself. Like, it's major.
Yes. Oh, thank you. Any other questions? Questions or thoughts? This is so cool. Oh, yes.
So, Fran, I just want to ask a question on the sort of about the medical side. How do you go about, sort of finding the right guidance or the right medical doctor who is willing to help you? Because I have a feeling that there's many out there that, push people aside. I find as a woman, if I'm not advocating for myself as a whole, they won't do a test or they won't do a test. But to go into a doctor or find someone to say, I'm ready to make this transition.
It's a very good question. Before I started everything, I did a lot of research. I spoke to a lot of doctors, just messaged them personally, and just because I didn't want to end up with a doctor that I was going to be unhappy going to see, because who wants to do that? So I did a lot of research, and I spoke to a lot of other trans friends and queer people in the community, like, who do you go to? And I lucked out. I have a really awesome doctor.
Did you go for any additional mental health support? Because
Yes, yes. So
that's an important part of it.
yeah, yeah. A lot of times before you can even start hormone therapy, you're supposed to see someone because they want to know that you're doing it because you want to and you're in the right space to do it. Which is another thing when I said people think it's just easy and you could just start it. No, you have to get evaluated. You have to do tests. And there's a lot that goes into it that people don't seem to know about.
Thank you.
Good question.
So what made you decide that when you were creative, what made you go into the arts and choose that platform for expressing yourself? And how has that helped you along your journey in your transition?
I feel like as people in the gay community, we tend to just gravitate to the arts. It's a way to like let that out, even if it's in like a controlled setting. You get to just let that out of yourself a little bit. And I find a lot of you in this room can relate to that. But yeah, it was a way for me to like slowly start chipping away and like creating the identity that I am today was going to shows and like styling, all of that slowly, all those pieces made me, you know?
Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah.
Marches across the country. I shot a lot of them across the country. So what I noticed in the media, there was a lot of white photographers' stories and editors telling those stories.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a big believer that it needs to be more black people telling the stories of black people.
Correct. Yeah.
So I've been at a few trans events, and I've been a photographer to protect the trans that was in Franklin Park and some others.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't always feel like I belong, right? Or that I should be telling the story. So what advice, one, is it important for more trans to be photographers and tell their stories, and us that want to be authentic allies?
Yeah.
Begin as photographers, what would you give us as suggestions? One, to make sure that we feel like we belong, and that we're telling the best story that we can tell with our image.
I find a good way to approach it is approach those organizers and learn from them. What do you want me to do? Where do you want me to be? Am I going to be in the way of someone who is of the experience that's trying to learn? I find that speaking to the people putting it on will give you more of a, oh, okay, he's cool. He can do this. You know what I mean? So it's communication, honestly. Yeah.
Can I respond that for a minute? So, thank you so much. That was really great. And as someone who is, whose business is my focus is to work to be an ally. I have been in the advertising industry and modeling for over 30 years and have, and understand that my melanemic skin has allowed me much privilege. And I understand that I want to use that as my platform to open the door for others and hand out microphones just like we're doing
Yeah.
today. Because it's not my story to tell, but I know that I have that ability to open the door. So again, going to organizers, coming and finding other individuals that, I came here, I want to be a part of it. So
Yeah.
I want to learn. I don't want you to teach me. I'm hopefully going to be a sponge and just learn
Yeah.
on my own. But I think as someone who is here, I want all of you to know that, there are others like me that
Yes. Yes.
really are beginning to understand. Like, really a very, very, very white town here in Massachusetts, very limited until I went to college at Mass Amherst. And even then, only in the past few years, realizing and being able to talk out loud and being able to say, I didn't know that. And again, providing opportunities for
Yeah.
So you talk about being uncomfortable in certain spaces because you feel like you don't belong there. What do you do when you're in a space like that and you're uncomfortable and you feel like you shouldn't be there? What was your thought process? How do you handle a situation like that and move forward?
well, the old me would just like hide, you know. Now I am my space. You're my space now. You know what I mean? And that's just kind of the mindset you have to go in. And I say that in business, I say that in personal. People will see if you're owning the room or if you're holding yourself down, you know what I mean? And they'll read on your energy. So I find that I just have to walk in with my head high and whatever happens.
Any other questions for Fran?
So, you know, I get one of
That's fatty.
I'm doing this whole movement around Black joy, finding joy, pushing through that, because that's a big part of our resilience,
Yep.
finding our power, and help us find our voice.
Mm-hmm.
How are you, or do you think it's important for those in the LGBTQIA plus community
Mm-hmm.
to be also tapping into their joy as much as they can, to lift their voice and their power more, so that they don't necessarily fold when they're in a room, or if they go on the board, because, you know, if you don't go and go for it, sometimes you shrink.
Yeah.
People on the board, because everybody's trying to get everybody Black and everybody else onto something.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you bring it into it, and how do you lift their voice? Is it important to really tap into that joy aspect of life?
I feel like for me personally, since this became bigger than me, I always enter the room of like, who's watching, who's being inspired by this? Am I motivating, or am I now making other people feel like they have to shrink down because I'm coming in not confident, if that makes sense? So for me, it's just like the thought process of always thinking that I need to lift up my people. And that's just like the attitude you have to kind of walk into a room with, for me at least.
Any other comments, questions? Yes.
What part of Puerto Rico are you from?
Oh God. Denise? Corozal.
I was so happy you said that because I was raised in Trujillo Alto
Okay.
and like born in San Dulce, and I came to Lowell at 4 years old. The same, like very similar. So I'm very grateful to have that connection with you as a Hispanic in this community that wants to be an artist as well.
Mm-hmm.
So growing up with this journey of yours, did you have a good support system? Did you feel alone? And if you did feel alone, how did you pick up from that?
I feel like the moments when I felt alone, it was more me not being able to vocalize my needs or like how I was feeling. There's no way for me to voice it. I'm very lucky. I have a great support system. And I'm happy for it, but in a way it makes me sad because when I see other people that are going through the same thing that don't have it, it really hurts me. It really does.
And Fran, what advice would you give? I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I believe some stuff happens that we have no control over. So when it came to your support system, were you intentional about that work? Would you suggest people seek people out or just be open?
I think we kind of, there's a phrase that we all say, chosen family in the gay community. I think being able to build that for myself allowed me to then, I'm like, I have this backup. I can now tackle dealing with strangers and dealing with the challenges of kind of being trans, having to pass in the world and having to look a certain image to be perceived as equal to cis women and all that. But yeah, it's having that little chosen family that really helps.
Thank you. Okay, we have time for maybe one more question. Okay, yes.
Where do you find your strength when you're down or in an art block or just can't feel motivated or confident to like work on a new project or work on yourself?
Honestly, and all the messages I get from people that just watch everything that I have going on, I get letters from parents that are like, oh, I can now understand my trans child because I'm seeing you live this, you know what I mean? So a lot of my strength comes from those messages, for sure. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Jeez. Thank you so much, Fran, for your time.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I just want to shout out before we close our sponsor, Enterprise Bank. Thank you so much for bringing this series to life. If you want to support the Freestyle Arts Collective, you can visit us at freestylearts.org. And if you want to join us next month, we'll be talking to artist Chimeng soon here at LTC. Thanks so much for your support. Have a great day. Thank you.
I almost just walked away with this on.
Look, do it. And so we have a magical step and repeat. So if you want to take pictures, please do. Post, share. Thank you so much, Fran. Let's give it up for Fran. And you're